Hello. There's a peculiar sort of clarity that comes when you find out your wife is cheating on you. Not the kind of gut-wrenching, soap opera hysteria people expect. No screaming, no tears, no dramatic fist-through-the-wall moment. Just cold, clinical understanding, like noticing a crack in the foundation of a house you've already been planning to burn down. I found out on a Tuesday. Nothing special about the day, no ominous foreshadowing, no gut feeling. Just another regular evening. I came home earlier than usual, my schedule light because my biggest client rescheduled a meeting. Walked through the door, put my keys on the counter, and saw her phone buzzing on the kitchen island. Face down, but the notification preview was on. Had an amazing time today, babe. Can't stop thinking about you. Let's do it again soon. Now, I'm a lot of things, but stupid isn't one of them. I didn't grab the phone and go on some desperate scavenger hunt for evidence. I didn't storm into the bedroom demanding answers like some clueless idiot in a bad drama series. No, I just stood there, letting the weight of the message settle in. Babe, let's do it again soon. She was being unfaithful. A lesser man might have confronted her right then and there. Might have started shouting, throwing accusations, demanding explanations. But I've never been interested in knee-jerk reactions. Confrontation? That's what amateurs do when they have no plan. Instead, I turned around, walked to the fridge, and poured myself a drink. Bourbon. Neat. I sipped it slowly, watching the ice cube crack as the liquor melted it down. A perfect metaphor, really. On the surface, everything looked intact, but underneath, the fractures had already begun. And soon, everything would break. She walked into the kitchen 5 minutes later, oblivious to the silent funeral I was holding for our marriage in my head. She was smiling, probably still basking in the afterglow of whatever the hell she'd done earlier. Hey, you're home early, she chirped, walking over to kiss my cheek. I let her because it would make what came next so much better. See, the moment you realize you're being betrayed, you gain an incredible amount of power. The cheater? They still think they're in control. They think they're outsmarting you, deceiving you. But in reality, they're just walking into the trap you haven't sprung yet. I played the part of the oblivious husband flawlessly. Ate dinner with her. Asked about her day. Listened to her lies with the patience of a saint. Even laughed at her jokes. She had no idea that, in my head, I was already dissecting her life like a surgeon preparing for an autopsy. That night, as she showered, I finally picked up her phone. The message was from a saved contact, Darren. Just the name alone made me want to smirk. Darren. The kind of guy who probably still wore varsity jackets 10 years after high school, who thought working in sales made him an entrepreneur. I didn't open the message thread. That would be sloppy. Instead, I took her phone, snapped a perfect high-resolution photo of the screen, then placed it back exactly as I found it. I had everything I needed. Now came the fun part. I wasn't just going to leave her. No, that would be too easy. I wasn't going to let her cry her crocodile tears, apologize, promise to change. I wasn't going to give her the luxury of guilt. No, I was going to do something better. I was going to make her watch as I dismantled her life piece by piece, and she wouldn't even see it coming. The game had begun. Mornings in our house always followed the same routine. I'd wake up first, my internal clock set like a damn machine, long before the alarm ever thought about going off. I'd lie there for a few minutes, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing beside me, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. It was comforting in that automatic, unthinking way, a familiarity I had taken for granted. Then I'd slip out of bed, careful not to wake her, and head to the kitchen. Coffee first. Always. I liked the ritual of it, the slow pour, the scent filling the air, the quiet moment before the day really started. I'd make hers just the way she liked it, a splash of oat milk, one sugar, left on the counter so it'd be waiting when she finally stumbled out of bed, wrapped in her robe, still rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She'd always smile when she saw it. God, I love you, she'd mumble, voice hoarse from sleep, pressing herself against my back as I washed the dishes from the night before. And I'd smile too, every damn time, because it felt good to be loved like that. Or at least, to believe I was. That's the part that sticks with me now, the belief. The certainty that everything was exactly as it should be. Our life was smooth, structured, easy in all the right ways. We weren't perfect, no couple ever is, but we fit together in a way that made sense. We had inside jokes, shared routines, effortless intimacy. We built a home that felt warm, lived in, real. A place where friends gathered, where music played softly in the evenings, where I could close my eyes at night and think, this is good. This is enough. I worked in finance, A job that wasn't exciting but kept us comfortable. She was in marketing, more creative, the kind of person who could sell ice to a damn Eskimo if she wanted to. We didn't have kids yet, though it was a conversation we'd started having more seriously in the last year. Maybe soon, she'd say when the topic came up. I never pushed. I figured we had time. Looking back, I see the cracks now, thin as hairline fractures in glass. How she used to text me throughout the day, little updates, silly memes, just to stay connected. Then, slowly, that started to fade. How she used to light up when I walked through the door, dropping whatever she was doing to greet me. Then, over time, her kisses became more distracted, her "how was your day?" more of an afterthought than genuine curiosity. How she used to fall asleep curled up against me, her arm draped over my chest. And then, one day, I realized she'd started sleeping with her back to me, just out of reach. Little things. Things you notice, but don't question. Because it's easier to believe that life just shifts naturally. That people change, but not in ways that matter. We still had date nights. Still laughed over stupid reality shows. Still made love in the middle of the night, though maybe not as often as we used to. She still told me she loved me, and I still believed her. There was no dramatic turning point, no big fight, no moment that should have made me see. But there was one thing, one moment, one tiny inconsistency that sticks out now, like a needle hidden in the fabric of my memories. It was a Sunday. We were at brunch, her favorite little cafe downtown, the kind of place where they serve overpriced avocado toast and lattes with stupid designs in the foam. She was scrolling through her phone while I sipped my coffee, something she never used to do when we were together. Usually, she'd be engaged, talking, present. But that day, she was distracted, barely listening as I talked about an upcoming work project. Then, for just a second, her screen lit up with a message. I only caught a glimpse, but it was enough. "Darren, can't stop thinking about you." She swiped the notification away so fast, I almost thought I imagined it. Almost. But something in her body language changed, just for a fraction of a second. A moment of hesitation. A tension in her fingers before she set the phone down, face down. That was new. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She looked up, smiled, too quickly. "Yeah, work stuff." I didn't question it. I didn't let myself question it. Because we were happy, weren't we? Because she loved me, didn't she? Because things like that only happen to other people, not to us. So I smiled back. Let it go. Paid the bill, took her hand as we walked back to the car. And life moved on. For a while. It started with the perfume. Not the one she always wore. The light, floral scent that lingered on her skin, on our sheets, in the car after she'd been in it. No, this was different. Stronger. Muskier. A scent I didn't recognize. The first time I noticed, it was subtle. I walked past her in the kitchen one evening, catching a trace of something unfamiliar. For a second, I almost asked about it. Then she turned to me, smiling as she stirred something on the stove, and the moment passed. Maybe she had tried a new perfume. Maybe I was imagining it. Then it happened again. We were sitting on the couch, watching some show she had picked, her legs curled under her as she absent-mindedly scrolled on her phone. I leaned in, pressing a casual kiss to her shoulder, and there it was, that same unfamiliar scent. Faint, but unmistakable. I didn't say anything. Not then. But something shifted in my mind. A small, quiet click, like the first domino tipping over. A few days later, it was the phone calls. She had always been the kind of person who left her phone lying around. Unlocked, face up, never secretive. But lately, I started noticing little changes. The way she would angle her phone away from me when a message came in. The way she would take calls in another room instead of answering in front of me. The way her tone would shift, soft, almost conspiratorial, when she thought I wasn't listening. One night, I walked into the bedroom to grab my wallet before heading out for a late run. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to her ear. The moment she saw me, her posture changed. She stiffened, then laughed, too quickly, too forced. "Yeah, I know, right?" she said into the phone, her voice suddenly exaggeratedly casual. "Okay, I'll talk to you later." But she hung up before I could register who she had been talking to. I paused, watching her. Who was that? She looked up, blinking like she had just remembered I existed. Oh, just Sarah. Sarah, her best friend. The one she told everything to. The one who, as far as I knew, never called at night. I didn't say anything, just nodded. She forced a smile. "You heading out?" "Yeah." Be safe. She got up, kissed my cheek, and went to the bathroom. And just like that, the moment was over. But it stayed with me. It wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was off. And I had learned a long time ago that instincts, when sharp enough, feel an awful lot like certainty. I started paying closer attention. She started dressing differently for work. Not dramatically, but just enough for me to notice. Tighter skirts. Lower necklines. More time spent in front of the mirror before she left the house. Then there were the late nights. The sudden, last-minute work meetings that hadn't been a thing before. The way she'd text me, "Don't wait up," like she was doing me a favor. So I stopped waiting up. I started watching instead. And the cracks in our perfect little life were growing wider by the day. People lie in two ways, by saying too much or by saying too little. She had started doing both. At first, it was the over-explanations. The kind where a simple answer would have sufficed. But instead, she'd go into unnecessary detail, throwing in extra information I hadn't asked for. Me, "You're home late." Her, "Yeah, sorry, we had a meeting that ran over, and then Sarah wanted to grab drinks, and then my phone died, and I had to borrow hers to call an Uber, and the driver took the long way home, and too much." Then, other times, it was nothing at all. Me, "How was your day?" Her, "Good." Me, "What did you do?" Her, "Nothing special." She had never been that brief. Patterns. That's all lies are. Breaks in the rhythm. Deviations from what came before. And once you notice one, you start seeing them everywhere. She changed the passcode on her phone. She started sleeping with it under her pillow. She got a second Instagram account, separate from the one we both followed. She turned off location sharing, the one we had always kept on just in case. I never confronted her. Not yet. Confrontation gives people a chance to lie better. I wanted truth. Real truth. Undeniable truth. The kind that ends arguments before they start. So I started watching. Listening. Piecing things together the way you would with a puzzle where half the pieces are missing. Her car's odometer told me she was driving more than usual. The scent of cologne, not mine, lingered faintly on the passenger seat. Receipts in her bag showed charges at places she'd never mentioned visiting. And then, the biggest one. The one that told me I wasn't imagining any of it. A work dinner, she had said. Running late, she had texted. So I called. Not her. Her office. A friendly voice answered. Marketing department. I kept my tone casual. Hey, just checking. Has the team wrapped up the dinner yet? A pause. Then, confusion. Dinner. Yeah, the late meeting that ran over. Oh, there wasn't one scheduled for tonight. I thanked them. Hung up. Sat in silence for a long moment. She had lied. Blatantly. Easily. And I wasn't surprised. Just done. But done didn't mean walking away. Not yet. It meant setting the stage. There's a moment when you see something so undeniably real that your brain refuses to process it. It fights against the truth, scrambles for a rational explanation, a loophole, anything to make it less than what it is. But the truth doesn't bend. It doesn't soften itself for your comfort. It just sits there, raw and immovable, daring you to face it. I sat in that hotel room, laptop open, watching my wife wrap her arms around another man. Watching her kiss him, pull him into our home, into our bed. I didn't flinch. I didn't rage. I just watched. My fingers hovered over the trackpad, but I didn't need to rewind. Every detail was burned into my memory in real time. The way she smiled at him. The way she touched him. The way she never even hesitated. That was the part that stuck with me the most. She wasn't nervous, wasn't guilty. She wasn't stealing forbidden moments in the shadows. No, she was comfortable. At ease in her betrayal. As if this was just another ordinary night. As if I didn't exist. A lesser man would have slammed the laptop shut, punched the wall, broken something. But I wasn't a lesser man. I wasn't some heartbroken fool caught off guard by his cheating wife. No, I was awake now. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. My heartbeat was steady. My hands. Perfectly still. The only thing moving was my mind. Shifting, calculating, adjusting. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was an insult. A challenge. And I had never been the type to back down from a challenge. I watched until the end. Until she kissed him goodbye at the door, smoothed her hair, and disappeared into our bedroom like nothing had happened. Then I closed the laptop, picked up my glass, and took a slow sip of bourbon. The burn was familiar, grounding. All right then, game on. The first thing I did was transfer the video to a secure drive. Then I copied it onto 2 separate USBs, tucked them into a travel bag, and made sure every piece of evidence had a backup. A smart man doesn't just find the truth. He owns it, controls it, uses it like a weapon. I didn't go back home that night. Didn't text her. Didn't give her any reason to suspect a shift in the air. Let her sleep peacefully in my bed, oblivious to the fact that she had just forfeited her entire life without even knowing it. The next morning, I called into work. Told them I'd be taking some personal time. No excuses, no details. Just a simple statement. Because when you're about to dismantle someone's world, you don't want distractions. She texted me around noon. Hey babe, how's your dad? A lie. I had told her I was visiting my father, a convenient excuse to be gone for the weekend. She had smiled, kissed me goodbye, and probably started planning the evening with her lover before I even pulled out of the driveway. I stared at the message for a few seconds before replying. He's doing well. I might stay another night. I could almost hear her relief through the screen. Another night to play house with her side piece. Another night to dig her grave a little deeper. Perfect. I spent the rest of the day preparing. Every move had to be calculated, every step taken with precision. Because I wasn't just going to confront her. I wasn't going to throw my hands up and ask why, like some desperate, broken man begging for an explanation. No, I was going to bury her. And by the time I was done, she would wish she had never been stupid enough to think she could outplay me. She thought she was clever. Thought she had me wrapped around her little finger, that I was just another blind, trusting husband who would never see the knife until it was buried deep in his back. That was her first mistake. Her second mistake was thinking she could get away with it. But the biggest mistake? The one that would cost her everything? She underestimated me. That's the thing about betrayal, it isn't just about the act. It's about the arrogance, the casual cruelty of someone looking you in the eyes every day and deciding, over and over, that you aren't worth the truth. She had made her choice, and now it was my turn. Revenge wasn't about anger. Anger was messy, impulsive. I didn't want rage. I wanted precision. I wanted control. I wanted to take everything she thought she had and show her, piece by piece, that it was never really hers to begin with. The goal wasn't just to hurt her. The goal was to make her understand. I spent the next few hours going through every detail of her life, the things she valued most, the image she had carefully crafted for herself. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was living a double life, balancing between the devoted wife and the reckless adulteress, believing she could have both. But I knew exactly where to hit her where it would hurt the most. She cared about appearances. The perfect couple, the successful career, the admiration of her peers. She had spent years curating a flawless social image, making sure she was seen as someone to be envied. That was her weak spot. And that's exactly where I was going to strike. The first step was simple. I gathered every piece of evidence I had. The footage from her home cameras. Screenshots of the text messages I had quietly pulled from her cloud storage. A full, irrefutable dossier of her deception. No denials, no half-truths, no possibility of twisting the narrative. Just cold, undeniable fact. Then, I started setting the pieces in motion. I reached out to a few mutual acquaintances, the kind of people who loved gossip, who thrived on whispers and scandals. I didn't need to say much, just enough to plant the seed, to let suspicion take root. A comment here, a vague implication there. Within days, the cracks in her perfect facade would start to show. But that was just the foundation. The real masterpiece was yet to come. I started redirecting assets. Quietly, methodically. Our shared finances, investments, anything that had both our names attached to it. Bit by bit, I moved everything into accounts she couldn't touch, ensuring that when the moment came, she wouldn't just lose me, she'd lose the security she had taken for granted. I even paid off the lease on her car, effectively ensuring that the vehicle she proudly drove around, the one she had probably used to meet him, would be gone before she even realized what was happening. Then, I booked something special. A reservation at the same restaurant where she and her lover had dined together, just days before. I made sure it was a night when all her colleagues, her close friends, the people she desperately wanted to impress, would be in attendance. And then, I scheduled a surprise presentation. A celebration of our love. The invitations were sent, the venue arranged, the stage set. She would walk in expecting a romantic gesture, a night of admiration and affection. Instead, she would be walking straight into her own downfall. As the final touch, I prepared a short video montage. A collection of moments, some real, some fabricated, all designed to expose her for exactly what she was. The opening would be sweet, nostalgic, filled with memories of us together, the life we had built. And then, seamlessly, it would shift to footage of her sneaking in her lover, to the texts, to the lies. The room would go silent. The whispers would start. And she would know, not just that she had been caught, but that she had been played. That I had been steps ahead of her the whole time, watching, waiting. That she hadn't fooled me for a second. By the time the night was over, she wouldn't just lose me. She would lose everything. Her reputation, her security, the illusion of control she had so carefully maintained. And the best part? I wouldn't have to raise my voice. I wouldn't have to make a scene. I would simply watch her world collapse, piece by piece, just as she had tried to do to mine. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about education. And by the time I was done, she was going to learn exactly what it felt like to lose. Everything was set. Every detail planned. Every move accounted for. She had spent months thinking she was in control, spinning her web of lies while believing I was too blind to see. But now, the moment had come. The night that would unravel everything she had built. It started like any other evening. I came home, kissed her on the cheek, asked about her day. She smiled, oblivious, telling me about some meeting that didn't exist, weaving another thread into her ever-growing tapestry of deceit. I nodded, pretended to listen, played my part to perfection. She had no idea that tonight. She wasn't the one pulling the strings. I had already made sure of that. The dinner reservation was at 8. A high-end restaurant. One of those places where people went to be seen. It was the kind of place she loved, a place where she could put on her perfect wife act for an audience that mattered. And tonight, that audience would include our friends, her colleagues, people she wanted to impress. I had made sure of that, too. She had no reason to suspect anything when I told her to dress up, that I had planned something special. If anything, she looked pleased, maybe even a little smug. She probably thought I was trying to rekindle something, that my poor, clueless husband heart was still in desperate pursuit of a woman who had already discarded me. I let her think it. The car ride was quiet. She scrolled through her phone, occasionally glancing over with that practiced, affectionate smile she had perfected over the years. I wondered if she had texted him that day, if she had sent some secret little message about how she was playing both sides. It didn't matter. By the end of the night, she wouldn't have anyone left to lie to. We arrived right on time. The restaurant was packed, the atmosphere warm, elegant. She didn't notice how many familiar faces were already seated, watching, waiting. She didn't notice that the waiter gave me the slightest nod as we sat down, confirming that everything was ready. She was too busy basking in the illusion of control. The drinks arrived first. She lifted her glass, smiling at me over the rim. "This is nice," she said. "We should do this more often." I smiled back. "We should." And then, right on cue, the waiter approached. "Sir, everything is prepared. If you'd like to proceed with the presentation." She frowned, glancing between us. "Presentation?" I set my drink down. "Just a little something I put together. A surprise." Her confusion flickered into curiosity. She loved surprises, loved being the center of attention. She had no idea what was coming. The restaurant's projector hummed to life, the large screen coming down at the far end of the dining area. The lights dimmed slightly. All eyes turned to the display as the first images appeared, a slideshow of our best moments. Our wedding day, vacations, lazy Sunday mornings. Her smile softened, her body relaxing as she reached for my hand. "This is so sweet," she whispered. "I can't believe you did this." I squeezed her hand, but said nothing. And then, the shift. The transition was seamless. The happy memories faded, giving way to something else. Security footage. Our living room. Her and him. The moment she opened the door, pulled him inside. The moment their lips met. The moment she led him upstairs, unaware that every step had been recorded. A gasp rippled through the restaurant. Chairs shifted, murmurs spread like wildfire. She froze, her entire body stiffening, fingers clenching around the stem of her glass. "Wah," she started, but her voice failed her. The footage continued. Different angles, different nights. Every time she thought she was being careful, every time she thought she had gotten away with it. All captured, all displayed, all witnessed. Her colleagues watched in stunned silence. Our friends exchanged looks, some turning away in discomfort, others unable to look away at all. And I simply watched her. Watched as her perfect world collapsed in real time. Her skin went pale. Her breath quickened. She turned to me, eyes wide, searching for something, an out, an excuse, a denial she could cling to. But there was nothing. Nothing left to say. The final frame froze on the screen. Her, tangled in another man's arms, smiling, carefree, completely unbothered by the husband she had betrayed. I let the silence stretch, let the weight of the moment sink in. Then, calmly, I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a small, neatly folded envelope, and placed it on the table in front of her. "Divorce papers," I said, my voice even, unwavering. "Already signed." She didn't move, didn't breathe. "You can keep the house," I continued. "But the accounts? The investments? Everything you thought you could walk away with? All gone." Her lips parted, but no words came out. "Oh, and one last thing," I added, leaning in slightly. "Darren? He knows. I sent him the footage this morning." The way she flinched at his name was delicious. She finally looked around. Really looked, realizing for the first time how many people were watching. Her friends, her colleagues, her boss, people she would never be able to explain this away to. Her hands trembled as she reached for the envelope, fingers barely managing to open it. Inside, neatly clipped to the papers, was a single USB drive, the original copy of her sins. A souvenir, a reminder. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. "Enjoy your meal," I said, before turning and walking out of the restaurant, leaving her alone with the ruins of her life. She didn't move at first, didn't speak, just sat there, frozen, as if her mind was still trying to process what had just happened. The restaurant around her was silent, except for the quiet clinking of glasses, the hushed whispers spreading like wildfire. Eyes darted in her direction, some filled with pity, others with cruel amusement. The perfect wife, the charming, successful woman, exposed. Then, finally, it happened. The shattering. She inhaled sharply, her breath shaky, as her trembling fingers fumbled with the envelope I had left in front of her. Divorce papers. The reality of what they meant settled in fast. Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, wide, desperate, a storm of panic brewing beneath the surface. "Wait," she breathed, barely more than a whisper. "This isn't, we can talk about this." I tilted my head slightly, watching her. "Talk." My voice was calm, measured. "Like how you talk to him. Like how you talk to me. Lying every single day?" She flinched at the words, like they physically struck her. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, struggling to find something. Anything that might reverse what was already set in motion. "It's not what you think," she tried again, but her voice was breaking, cracking. "Please, just, can we go somewhere private?" I gave a small, almost amused exhale. "Now you care about privacy?" My gaze flickered toward the screen behind her, where the final image was still frozen in place. Her betrayal, undeniable, inescapable. "It's a little late for that, don't you think?" Her breath hitched. She glanced around now, truly realizing that there was no escape. Her boss was at the far table, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Her colleagues whispered among themselves, some avoiding eye contact, others staring at her like she was a complete stranger. Friends, our friends, exchanged looks, and I could already see the unspoken verdict in their expressions. Whatever reputation she had, whatever admiration she had carefully built over the years, was crumbling around her like a house of cards caught in a storm. Her eyes welled up, and she reached for my hand instinctively, the same way she had done 1,000 times before when she needed reassurance. But I didn't move. I didn't pull away. I just let her fingers brush against mine for a fraction of a second before I let my hand fall to my side. The rejection clear. The first tear slipped down her cheek. She stopped, swallowed hard. I made a mistake. I let a bead of silence stretch between us, just long enough for her to feel the weight of it. Then I leaned in slightly, just enough for only her to hear. "No," I said, voice quiet, firm. "A mistake is accidental. What you did, that was a choice. Repeated. Deliberate. Planned." She let out a shaky exhale, her whole body trembling now. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "I was just selfish." I finished for her. She opened her mouth, then closed it, because she knew I was right, and there was nothing left to say. A chair scraped against the floor somewhere behind us. Someone stood up, then another. The murmurs grew louder. The weight of the public spectacle pressed down on her, suffocating, inescapable. She wiped at her face hastily, but the tears kept coming. Please, she tried again, voice barely holding together. We can fix this. I stared at her for a moment. Then, with the same detached calm I had maintained from the beginning, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wedding ring, and placed it neatly beside the envelope. You already did, I said simply. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her there, exposed, alone, and drowning in the consequences of her own choices. The world doesn't fall apart all at once. It doesn't explode, doesn't shatter in an instant. It cracks, slowly, inevitably, until one day, you're standing in the wreckage of what used to be your life, wondering when exactly it all fell apart. That's what happened to her. I didn't stay to watch her leave the restaurant. I didn't see the moment she realized she had nowhere to run, no excuse that could save her. But I didn't need to. I knew. She had spent years crafting a perfect image, curating the right friends, maintaining the illusion of control. And now, in one night, I had taken all of it from her. The aftermath was swift. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone had already flooded with messages, some from mutual friends, some from people who just wanted a front-row seat to the destruction. Is it true? I can't believe she did that. She's been calling me nonstop. The response was unanimous. Shock, disgust, judgment. The very people she had worked so hard to impress were now the ones whispering behind her back, dissecting every detail of her downfall. Her boss was one of them. I had made sure of that. He had been at the restaurant that night, had seen everything. And in her line of work, where reputation was everything, there was no recovering from something like this. Within a week, she had been quietly let go. Officially, it was due to workplace integrity concerns. Unofficially, it was because no one wanted to associate with the woman who had just been publicly exposed as a liar and a cheater. Her friends? Gone. Some cut her off immediately, too embarrassed to be connected to her. Others tried to play neutral at first, but the weight of the scandal was too much. Nobody wanted to be seen defending her. Nobody wanted to risk being dragged down with her. Then came her family. They had always liked me, maybe even more than they liked her. Her parents reached out, not to defend her, but to apologize to me, to express their shock, their disappointment. Her mother sounded close to tears. We didn't raise her to be like this. Her father? Cold, clipped words. She's made her choices. Now she has to live with them. She tried calling me. Once. I let the phone ring. Let her sit there, staring at the screen, knowing I wasn't going to pick up. Then I blocked her number. The house? I had already handled that. The mortgage was in my name. She had no claim to it. When she finally worked up the nerve to reach out through a mutual friend, begging for a conversation, I had one message sent back. Your things are in storage. You have 1 week to pick them up before I donate them. She didn't argue. She knew better. As for her lover, he disappeared the moment things went south. Whatever promises he had made, whatever sweet nothings he had whispered in the dark, vanished the second her world collapsed. That was the thing about men like him. He was never in it for her. He was in it for the thrill, for the chase, for the stolen moments behind my back. But now? Now she wasn't the exciting, untouchable woman sneaking around with him. Now she was the woman whose entire life had just gone up in flames. And he wanted nothing to do with that. She was alone. Utterly, completely alone. And me? I walked away from it all without a scratch. Without losing anything. If anything, I walked away better. Free. Smarter. Stronger. I wasn't the one picking up the pieces. I wasn't the one drowning in regret, scrambling for something, anything to hold on to. That was her. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with them. I never saw her again. Not in person, at least. Sometimes, I'd hear whispers, how she was struggling to find work, how she had moved into a small apartment on the other side of the city, how she had tried reaching out to people who once adored her, only to be met with silence. But none of that mattered to me. Her life, her failures, her regrets, none of it had anything to do with me anymore. She was just someone I used to know, a ghost wandering through the ruins of the life she destroyed with her own hands. And me? I was doing just fine. Better than fine, actually. Work was thriving, my finances untouched, my social circle intact. I had control. I had peace. And, most importantly, I had my self-respect. No amount of apologies or explanations could ever erase what she had done, and I never once felt tempted to hear them. Some people beg for closure, for one last conversation, for a reason to forgive. I never needed any of that. The truth was my closure. The silence was my answer. She had been erased from my life, and that was enough. The last trace of her existence in my world was the wedding ring I had taken off that night at the restaurant. I never threw it away. Never pawned it. I kept it in a small box, tucked away in the back of a drawer, not as a reminder of what I lost, but as a reminder of what I refused to tolerate. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It's not just about the lies, or the cheating, or the humiliation. It's about choice. And she had made hers. But here's the thing, sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the world feels still, a thought creeps into my mind. Did I go too far? I don't regret exposing her. I don't regret leaving. But there's a part of me, a small, quiet voice in the back of my head, that wonders if the destruction I left behind was necessary. Did I truly need to take everything? To make sure she had nothing left? Or was that just my own pride, my own thirst for revenge, disguising itself as justice? Because let's be honest, revenge and justice aren't always the same thing. Justice is about balance, about making things right. Revenge? Revenge is about making someone feel what they made you feel. And I did. I know she felt it. The humiliation, the loneliness, the fear of losing everything in an instant. But if justice is about restoring order, about moving on, then why did I make sure she had no way to rebuild? Did I want fairness? Or did I just want to watch her suffer? And maybe that's the real question. Not just what would you have done in my place, but how far is too far? When someone betrays you, do they deserve to lose everything? Or does that make us just as cruel as they were? You tell me. Bye-bye.